They tied her to the pyre, lit the fire beneath her, watched as the flames climbed higher, swallowing her pale, silver-lit skin, consuming her like she was never meant to exist. And she didn't fight. She didn't scream. She just stared up at the sky, as if she was waiting for something worse, something that hadn't come yet. Then the gunshot rang out. A stranger stepped from the shadows, and in that moment, everything changed. He thought he was saving her, but he didn't know what she was. Didn't know why the tribe was so desperate to burn her alive. Didn't know what was waking up inside her. And when he finally learned the truth, it was already too late. Because she wasn't just a girl, she was a message, a signal. And something out there had finally heard her call. The flames crackled hungrily, licking at the wooden stakes, climbing higher with every gust of wind. Thick black smoke curled into the night sky, carrying the acrid scent of burning flesh and wet earth. She was still alive, barely. The alien girl hung limply, tied to the wooden pyre by thick, twisted vines. Her silver hair, once radiant, almost glowing, was now streaked with ash, tangled and clinging to her face, damp with sweat. Her skin, pale and almost translucent under the flickering light, had begun to blister where the heat kissed it. And yet, she didn't scream, she didn't fight. Her lips were cracked and dry, her breath shallow, but she made no sound. Not a single plea, not a single cry for mercy. She had accepted her fate. The tribesmen danced around the fire, their bodies painted in blood-red symbols, their movements erratic and fevered. Each stomp of their bare feet sent up clouds of dust, mixing with the embers that spiraled into the night. They chanted, voices rising in a primal, guttural rhythm, a song of sacrifice, of purification. One by one, they threw bones into the fire, charred remnants of their past offerings, their eyes gleaming behind their grotesque bone mass. At the center of them all stood the leader, adorned in a headdress made of human skulls. He raised his arms toward the sky, his deep voice cutting through the frenzied chaos. The fire cleanses the taint. Let the impurity burn. Let her soul return to the void. The others repeated his words, their chant growing louder, their movements faster. The girl did not flinch. Her empty, glassy eyes reflected the firelight, cold, detached. She was waiting to die. Then, a sound. Something foreign. Something that did not belong in this savage ritual. A crack of branches snapping in the darkness. The chants faltered. The leader's head snapped toward the noise, his skeletal headdress tilting slightly. The tribesmen froze, their primal energy momentarily replaced by something else. Something more dangerous. Curiosity, and then a voice, low, rough, cutting through the silence like a blade. Let her go. From the shadows, a man stepped forward. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his dark clothes tattered and covered in dust from the wastelands beyond. A long coat clung to his frame, the hem torn and soaked from the damp jungle floor. But it wasn't the coat they noticed. It was the gun he held at his side. Not like their crude weapons, not spears, not knives. Something older, deadlier, built for precision and destruction. The glow from the fire caught the polished barrel, casting a faint reflection against his hardened face. He wasn't afraid, and that made them pause. The leader tilted his head. You do not belong here. His voice was low, almost amused. The tribesmen surrounded the fire, their painted faces unreadable behind the mask. But they did not attack, not yet. They were waiting to see if the stranger was stupid enough to make the first move. The man didn't move. His gaze flickered to the girl, still bound to the pyre, flames creeping closer. Her chest barely moved. She was slipping away. He clenched his jaw. I won't ask again. Cut her loose. The leader laughed, a dry, rasping sound, as if his throat had been hollowed out long ago. You do not understand, outsider. He spread his arms, gesturing to the writhing, fire-lit mass of his people. She is not one of us. She is not of this world. She was never meant to exist. The man's grip on his gun tightened. Neither were any of us. The leader's expression did not change, but there was something new in his eyes. A flicker of recognition, understanding. Ah, you have seen them before. The man's stance stiffened. The leader nodded as if he had confirmed a long-suspected truth. Then you already know why she must burn. The girl's head lolled to the side, her lips parting as if she wanted to speak, but no words came. Only a slow, rattling breath. The fire was creeping higher. Time was running out. The man raised his gun. "Step away!" A flicker of irritation crossed the leader's face. "And if I don't?" His painted fingers tapped the hilt of his bone dagger, his followers edging closer, their bodies tense, ready to strike. The man exhaled slowly. His finger tightened on the trigger. "Then you burn with her." Silence. The air grew thick with tension, thick with the heat of the fire, thick with the unspoken challenge hanging between them. The leader did not move. The tribesman did not breathe. And then, the man pulled the trigger. The gun roared, the shot echoing through the jungle. A burst of blue energy tore through the air, slamming into one of the support beams of the pyre. The entire structure groaned, splintering, tilting, and then it collapsed. The fire exploded outward, embers flying, sparks showering the horrified tribesmen. The girl fell. The man moved, fast. He caught her before she hit the ground, her weight impossibly light in his arms. Her breath was shallow, her skin ice cold despite the fire. But she was alive, for now. The leader staggered back, eyes burning with rage, but he did not give the order to attack. Not yet, because something worse was coming. The girl's eyes fluttered open. For the first time, she looked at her rescuer and whispered something so soft, so weak, that only he could hear it. "You should have let me die." The girl barely breathed in his arms. She was weightless, impossibly light, as if she weren't made of flesh and bone at all. Her silver hair, tangled with ash and sweat, clung to her face, and her skin, it was cold, too cold. Even after being so close to the fire, she wasn't radiating heat. She was radiating something else, something wrong. And then, barely above a whisper, her lips parted. "You should have let me die." The man stiffened, but he didn't respond. Not yet. Not when the tribe was still watching. Not when he could still feel their eyes digging into him, burning with a hatred so raw it felt ancient. The tribal leader stood in the same spot, unmoving, his grotesque skull headdress casting a shadow over his face. He should have been furious, should have ordered an attack the second the pyre fell. But he didn't. Instead, he just watched. And that was worse. "You have made a mistake, outsider." His voice was calm, unshaken by the chaos that had just unraveled. The man ignored him. He turned, pulling the girl up, her body limp but still alive. They had to move fast. The tribe wouldn't stand frozen forever. "She is not meant to live." The words cut through him, stopping him for just a moment. And in that moment, he made the mistake of looking at her, really looking at her. Her eyes were open now, staring at him, unfocused, glassy. They weren't human, too bright, too deep, like there were entire galaxies trapped behind them, shifting, writhing, collapsing into themselves. And then, something inside her pulsed. A soft, eerie glow flickered beneath the burns on her skin, pulsing with a rhythm that wasn't human. That wasn't natural. The man's grip on her tightened, and for the first time, he wondered if the tribe wasn't wrong, if maybe she really wasn't meant to live. The leader took a slow step forward. "You do not understand what she is, but you will." The man raised his gun, a silent warning. The leader didn't flinch. "That thing in your arms, it is not a girl. It is not a victim. It is not something you save. It is something you kill." The man didn't answer. He turned, gripping the girl tighter, and ran. The jungle was a black abyss, vines curling around his boots, shadows twisting in every direction. He could hear them. The tribe was moving, spreading through the trees like a pack of wolves. But they weren't chasing him. Not yet. They were watching, because they knew something he didn't. The girl stirred slightly, her body twitching against his hold. Her breathing was uneven, shallow, like she was on the edge of something deep and dangerous. "You should have let me die," she whispered again. This time there was something in her voice, something distant, like she wasn't just speaking to him, like she was pleading with something inside her. The man pushed forward, deeper into the jungle, farther from the fire. But no matter how far he ran, the glow beneath her skin only got stronger, and he knew with a sickening certainty that he had just brought something with him, something far worse than death. The rain wouldn't stop. It hammered against the jungle leaves, beating down in violent waves. The man pushed forward, gripping the girl tighter, his boots slipping on the soaked ground. But he didn't stop. He couldn't, because she was burning up in his arms. Her body jerked violently, a shuddering gasp escaping her lips. Her silver hair, damp, tangled with soot and blood, clung to her face, her skin ice cold despite the fever consuming her from the inside. "You should have let me die," she whispered. Her voice was weaker now, barely more than a breath. "Yeah, well, I didn't," he muttered, keeping his pace steady. But deep down, he was starting to wonder if she was right. The jungle felt wrong. The storm raged on, but something beneath it, something else was moving. Not the tribe, not yet. Something deeper, something listening. The trees thinned ahead, revealing an ancient ruin. Cracked stone walls covered in moss, vines curling through its broken archways. Good enough. The man ducked inside, kicking over loose rubble, clearing space near what used to be an altar. He set her down gently, but the moment she touched the ground, she twitched violently. A sharp, strangled gasp left her lips, her back arching against the stone. Her fingers dug into the floor, nails scratching deep against the wet rock. And under her skin, something was moving. The man stepped back, gun raised. "What the hell is happening to you?" She gasped again, her breath shaky, her eyes fluttering, then snapping wide open. The glow beneath her skin flared, veins igniting in an eerie blue-white pulse, flickering like a dying star. Her pupils, they weren't right anymore. They were shifting, spiraling, breaking apart and reforming. Like something inside her was trying to get out. She turned her head toward him, lips trembling. I don't remember who I am. I don't remember what I am." Her hands clawed at the stone beneath her, her body tensing, her breath coming in short, panicked gasps. "But they do!" Her voice cracked, her eyes flashing with something deep, something older than words. "And they're coming for me." The air shifted, the jungle grew silent, and then a sound. A low, resonating hum, vibrating through the stones, pressing against his skull like a pressure he couldn't escape. It wasn't just coming from her anymore. It was coming from above, from the sky. The man's breath hitched. This wasn't just about the tribe, was it? She swallowed hard, her eyes locking onto his, pleading, desperate. They weren't trying to kill me. They were trying to stop me before something worse found me first. Her voice shook, and this time so did the ground, because whatever was coming had finally arrived. The girl wasn't getting better. She wasn't healing. She was changing, and he could feel it. They had taken shelter in an old ruin, a collapsed temple swallowed by the jungle, its stone walls cracked, vines crawling through every opening. The rain was pounding outside, a thick, suffocating mist curling around the trees. The fire he had started flickered weakly, barely pushing back the darkness. And in the center of it all, she lay motionless, her breath shallow, her fingers twitching, and under her skin, something moved. The man sat against the wall, gun resting against his knee, watching her. Not with concern, not with pity, with calculation, because he needed to decide, was she really worth saving, or was she just another mistake waiting to happen? Her eyes flickered open, a whisper, barely audible. "You should have killed me." He exhaled, rubbing a hand over his face. "Yeah, you've said that already." She blinked, dazed, like she was trying to pull herself back from something deep. something dark. Her lips parted, and then she gasped. Her body arched violently, fingers clawing at the stone beneath her. Her veins ignited, glowing with that unnatural blue light, pulsing like a dying star. She was burning from the inside. The man was on his feet in an instant, gun raised. "What the hell is happening to you?" She couldn't answer. Her mouth opened in a silent scream, her back arching harder, her body convulsing. Something inside her was reacting, something waking up. And then she went still. The silence was deafening. She lay there, breath hitching, her glowing veins slowly dimming. Her chest rose and fell, erratic, unsteady. And then she turned her head, looked at him, and for the first time he saw it. The thing inside her, the thing that wasn't human, her pupils. They weren't pupils anymore. They were rings of shifting, flickering light, spiraling like a collapsing galaxy, endless and empty all at once. His grip on his gun tightened. "What the hell are you?" She stared at him, silent, her breathing uneven. And then a single tear slipped down her cheek. "I don't know." Something in his chest tightened, because she wasn't lying, because whatever she was just as terrified as he was. But that didn't mean she wasn't dangerous. That didn't mean he shouldn't put a bullet in her skull before it was too late. The rain outside grew heavier. Something moved in the jungle, and he realized, and they weren't alone anymore. The tribe had found them, but they weren't coming to kill him. They were coming to finish what they started. And this time, maybe they were right. The rain pounded harder against the cracked stone walls. The jungle outside was alive with movement. Shadows slithered between the trees, flickering shapes barely visible through the mist. The tribe had found them, and this time, they weren't singing. They weren't chanting. They were waiting. The man's grip on his gun tightened. "They're here." The girl didn't react. She lay still, her breath slow, her glowing veins fading back to normal. But her eyes, they hadn't changed back. They still burned with that shifting, spiraling light. The kind of light that didn't belong to anything living. The kind of light that felt wrong just to look at. He took a step toward her. "You need to tell me what you are, right now." She flinched, her hands curled against the cold stone floor, her entire body tensing. Like she was afraid to answer, or worse, like she didn't know if she could. Her voice cracked. She swallowed hard. "I don't remember." Footsteps crunched outside the temple ruins. The tribe was closing in, slow, patient, because they knew something he didn't. And for the first time, he wondered, were they really the ones hunting? Or was he the one trapped with something worse? A voice called out through the rain, the leader. "Outsider, do you see it now?" The man didn't answer, didn't move. His gun was still pointed at the girl, but now he wasn't sure if he was holding it up to protect her or to stop her. The leader stepped forward just beyond the broken temple entrance. The firelight from his torch flickered across his bone mask, the red symbols painted onto his bare chest, running in streaks from the rain. "You think you saved her," he said. "You think she is a victim, a lost soul." His voice was calm, certain, but she is not lost. She is waiting. The man's grip tightened. Waiting for what? The leader tilted his head, and for the first time, he smiled. "For the thing inside her to wake up?" The girl shuddered. A sharp gasp left her lips, her body arching off the ground. The glowing veins under her skin flared to life again. Brighter, stronger. Her pupils contracted, the spiraling light pulling inward, shifting like something breaking apart inside her. "No," she whispered, voice shaking. "No, I don't want this." The man swore under his breath. Whatever was happening, it was getting worse. He turned the gun on the leader. "Tell me how to stop it." The leader laughed, low, dark, a sound that sent a chill up his spine. "You don't." The leader took a slow step forward. "You should have let her burn." The man didn't hesitate. He pulled the trigger. The shot cracked through the night, an explosion of energy slamming into the leader's chest. For a moment, everything was silent. And then, the leader didn't fall. The man's blood ran cold. The shot had hit him directly. But there was no wound, no blood, just a pulse of light flickering from beneath the red symbols on his skin. The leader slowly tilted his head. His smile widened. Now do you understand? The man didn't move, couldn't breathe, because the answer was right in front of him. It wasn't just the girl. It wasn't just her that was wrong. The tribe, the entire damn tribe. They weren't just humans. They were something else, and they had been waiting for this moment, waiting for the girl to wake up. Behind him, the girl let out a strangled cry. Her hands clawed at the stone, her body trembling violently. The light beneath her skin was spreading now, moving up her arms, her neck. Her eyes snapped open, and she screamed. It wasn't a human sound. It wasn't even an animal sound. It was something deeper, something older. The leader lifted his arms. The awakening has begun. And in the distance, something answered her scream. A low, resonating hum, echoing from the sky, from above the clouds. The jungle shook, and suddenly, the man wasn't worried about the tribe anymore, because whatever was coming wasn't from this world. The jungle wasn't quiet anymore. The rain still poured, the wind still howled, but beneath it all, something else was moving. Something big, something watching. The man tightened his grip on his gun, but he knew it wouldn't make a difference. Not against this. The leader of the tribe stood unshaken, his skeletal headdress gleaming under the flickering torchlight. "It is too late now, outsider," he said, voice laced with something that sounded like triumph. "The gods have heard her." The girl was barely breathing now, her body arched, her fingers curling into claws against the stone. Her veins pulsed violently, the glow spreading beneath her skin like cracks in fragile glass. And her eyes were no longer hers. They were hollow, endless, a swirling mass of light and darkness, flickering with something older than words. Something inhuman, something waking up. The ground shuddered. A deep, low vibration rumbled through the earth, sending cracks through the ancient stone walls of the ruins. The torches flickered wildly, the flames bending unnaturally, as if being pulled by something unseen. And above them, the clouds split apart. A shadow loomed in the sky, massive, unfathomable, a ship or something worse. It hovered above the jungle, its underbelly lined with pulsating lights, flickering in perfect sync with the girl's glowing veins. The humming sound grew louder, pressing against the air, making it hard to breathe. It wasn't just noise. It was a signal, a command, and the girl was answering. The man took a step back. "This wasn't an accident, was it?" he said, his voice low, uncertain. The leader laughed. "She was never abandoned. She was left here to be found, to be delivered." The man felt sick. Everything, the burning, the sacrifice, it wasn't a punishment, it was a summoning. And now, it had worked. The girl's breath hitched, her lips parted, her voice a barely audible whisper. "They're here." Her fingers twitched, nails scraping against the stone, her body fighting itself. "I don't want this. I don't want to go." But the lights on the ship flared brighter, and her body reacted, against her will, against her fear. She was losing control. She was being pulled back. The man cursed under his breath. "Then fight it." She looked at him, and for the first time, her eyes flickered between what she was and what she used to be, between human and something else. I can't." The humming sound grew unbearable, rattling through his skull, vibrating through his bones. And then, she screamed. The ship descended. The jungle split open beneath it, trees ripped from the ground as a gravitational force crushed the ruins, sending debris flying. The tribe fell to their knees, arms raised in worship. And the girl was floating, her body lifting off the ground, her arms limp at her sides, her hair whipping wildly in the force of the pull. She wasn't in control anymore. She was being taken. The man moved without thinking. He grabbed her wrist, yanking her back down, his boots sliding on the wet stone. "Stay with me." Her breath hitched. She blinked, her lips trembling. "I don't want to go." But the ship wanted her, and it was stronger than both of them. The leader stepped forward, eyes burning with reverence. "You cannot stop it, outsider. She was never meant to stay." The man ignored him. He held on to her, his grip bruising, anchoring her to the ground as the ship's pull grew stronger. "You have to fight it." She squeezed her eyes shut, her hands clutching at his arm like a lifeline. And for one horrible second, he thought he was losing her. Her body was shaking, caught between two forces, two fates. And then, something inside her snapped. She let out a guttural, unearthly cry, her veins flashing so bright it nearly blinded him. And suddenly, the ship reeled back. The hum cut out. The gravitational force vanished, and she collapsed into his arms. For a long moment, everything was silent. Even the jungle, even the tribe. The ship hovered, its lights flickering, as if unsure of what had just happened. And then, it left. No attack, no retrieval. It simply rose higher and higher into the clouds, and was gone. The tribe stared in disbelief. Their leader, silent, and the girl. The girl was still breathing, still here. The ritual had failed. The summoning had been rejected, and whatever had been waiting for her out there didn't want her anymore. The man exhaled slowly, running a shaking hand through his damp hair. He looked down at the girl, still unconscious in his arms, still glowing, but fading now. And finally, he asked the only question that mattered. "What the hell are you?" The jungle was dead silent. The ship was gone. The pulsing hum that had shaken the sky, the earth in their bones had vanished, leaving nothing but emptiness in its wake. The girl was still here, but she wasn't supposed to be, and they all knew it. The man stared down at her, his breathing ragged, his pulse still hammering in his ears. Her glowing veins were dim now, flickering softly beneath her ashen, burned skin. But she was alive, still breathing, still herself. And for the first time, she had won. The tribe didn't move. They stood at the edge of the ruins, their faces hidden behind bone mass, their bodies rigid with something worse than rage, fear. Their leader stood motionless, the firelight flickering against his hollow eyes. "This should not have happened," he whispered. His voice was small now, like a man who had spent his entire life praying to something that never existed. The gods had called, and she had denied them. The man lowered his gun. Guess she had other plans. The girl shifted in his arms, a soft, broken sound escaping her lips. Her fingers twitched, her head turning slightly. And then her eyes fluttered open. For the first time, her gaze was clear. No more spiraling light, no more alien glow, just her. And when she looked at him, she was afraid. "They didn't want me," she whispered. The words should have sounded victorious. Instead, they were terrified. "They left me." The man swallowed. "Yeah, I noticed." Her breath hitched. "No, you don't understand." She turned her head, looking up at the sky, at the empty space where the ship had been. "They were supposed to take me back. I was made for them. I was never supposed to stay here." Her hands curled into the fabric of his jacket, her voice breaking. "But they left me anyway." She wasn't relieved. She was devastated. The leader of the tribe took a slow step forward. "You are an abomination," he whispered. "Even your own kind has rejected you." His voice trembled, the authority shattered. The girl flinched, and for the first time, she looked like exactly what they had always called her, a mistake. The man's jaw tightened. He turned his gun toward the leader one last time. "We're leaving." The leader didn't argue. He didn't move, didn't fight, because the real battle was already over. The girl had been forsaken by her own, and in their eyes, that was punishment enough. The man pulled her up, steadying her on her feet. She was weak, unsteady, but she followed. One step, then another. The tribe didn't try to stop them. They simply watched, silent, afraid, because she wasn't one of them, and she wasn't one of the things in the sky. She was something else, something unknown, and that made her the most dangerous of all. The jungle swallowed them whole. The ruins faded behind them. And for the first time, the girl was free, but she wasn't safe. Because if the ones who created her didn't want her anymore, then who did? And more importantly, what was she supposed to become now? The man exhaled, glancing at her. You got a name? She hesitated. Then finally, I don't remember. He nodded. Figures. He adjusted his grip on his gun, eyes scanning the endless darkness ahead. Guess we'll figure that out later. And with that, they walked into the unknown, together. She wasn't supposed to live. The fire was meant to consume her. The tribe was meant to silence her. And the ones in the sky, they were supposed to take her back, but they didn't. They left her behind, rejected her, abandoned her. Because whatever she was before, she isn't that anymore. Now she walks among us, still breathing, still changing, and one day, she will find out what she has become. But the real question is, will the rest of us survive it? If you made it this far, congratulations. You're not afraid of the unknown. But this is just the beginning. What happens next? What will she become? Let me know your theories in the comments. And don't forget, hit like, share, and subscribe for more dark and twisted sci-fi horror stories. Because in this universe, survival isn't the end. It's just the beginning.